Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are wading into one of the most profound, most demanding, and frankly most exhausting realities of modern adulthood. We're talking about the experience of the sandwich generation.
It's this massive global group of adults, right? Typically, they're squarely in their 40s and 50s.
Exactly. And they're simultaneously trying to manage the needs and well-being of their aging parents and their dependent or, semi-dependent children.
Yeah, and the source material we reviewed for this deep dive had this metaphor that just hits so hard.
Oh, I know the one you're talking about. It's so accurate.
It said it's less like a sandwich, which sounds, kind of neat and contained.
Right, manageable.
And more like juggling flaming swords while wearing a smile.
And that is it. That's the feeling. So I want to ask you directly as you're listening right now, do you ever feel like you're responsible for literally everyone in your life, just constantly making these decisions that balance all these competing needs, and often without having planned for, this sheer magnitude of responsibility?
If that resonates, then yeah, you are absolutely not alone. And you are squarely in the demographic we're talking about today.
And that feeling, that profound sense of unexpected, almost inescapable responsibility is exactly what we need to unpack.
It is. Our source material for this comes primarily from a really insightful exploration into this phenomenon. It was published under the title O Desafio da Geração Sanduíche, which translates to The Challenge of the Sandwich Generation.
So our mission today is to take excerpts from that extensive research and just, unpack the complex emotional, financial, and logistical realities of this life stage.
Because this is a demographic and a psychological challenge that is truly defining midlife for millions of people. And just understanding it, that's the first step toward managing it sustainably.
And this deep dive is brought to you by the team at Fluent Mindcast. We are dedicated to bringing you essential knowledge quickly and thoroughly, so you're well informed on the issues that really matter.
We're here to give you that shortcut to competence in these really critical areas of life.
So let's start with the core definition, because I think just recognizing the term, just having a name for it, often provides this crucial sense of validation, of relief even.
It really does. So the sandwich generation refers to adults who are caring for their aging parents, who need help with health and daily life, and at the same time, their own dependent or semi-dependent children.
What makes it so unique isn't just the quantity of care, though. It's the radical quality difference between the two sets of needs.
Right, and the emotional whiplash that comes with that.
Yes, the whiplash. The sources point out you need this incredible flexibility and patience and just this unbelievable emotional intelligence because you are switching focus constantly.
Think about that mental pivot you have to make. In a single hour, you might go from navigating teenage drama or discussing a career crisis with your 22-year-old.
Or filling out college applications.
Yeah. And then, boom, you're immediately coordinating a really serious medical appointment for a parent or trying to manage their medication schedule.
Or talking to a home health aide. The skill sets you need for each group are they're diametrically opposed.
Completely. You need to set firm boundaries and encourage your children to launch, but then you need almost infinite patience and this incredibly tender care for your parents who are, in a state of decline.
That immediate mental and emotional shift is what creates so much of the deep internal strain.
And recognizing that confirms that the complexity isn't some personal failing on your part. It's a structural reality of modern life that just requires, specialized coping mechanisms.
Okay, so let's dig into that a bit. What's actually driving this?
Sure.
In part one, we're looking at the double bind, this enormous accelerating demographic and economic shift that's powering the trend globally.
And it is absolutely not a niche issue. This is a rapid, worldwide cultural tidal wave.
It really is a global phenomenon. And what's so fascinating and what the research really underscores is that the sandwich generation is expanding so quickly because of a convergence of two massive but very distinct global trends.
And they're both hitting that 45 to 55 age bracket at the exact same time.
So on one side, you have the aging population. People are just living much, much longer thanks to advances in healthcare, nutrition, all of it.
Which is a global success story, of course. But it means the duration of care that older adults need is extending, sometimes for decades. And that naturally shifts this exponentially larger, more sustained responsibility onto middle-aged adults.
And then on the other side, the economic stability that previous generations used to launch their kids is well, it's eroding.
It is. You have these huge economic and social shifts, high debt loads, the gig economy, massive student loans that make it extremely difficult for younger adults to achieve genuine independence early on.
So this dual overlapping responsibility creates this intense pressure zone, and it's focused squarely on that 45 to 55 age group.
And we see it everywhere. Countries across Europe, North America, parts of Asia, they're all reporting this exact same demographic squeeze. It's become a truly universal human experience today.
So let's break down the pressure from above first. Parents living longer. As you said, longevity is a success story. But the crucial challenge it introduces is that longer lives often mean longer periods of dependency.
That's the key point. The sources really stress that older adults are often living longer with chronic conditions.
Right, not just living longer in perfect health.
Exactly. We're talking about things like early stage dementia, advanced heart disease, severe mobility issues, or complicated arthritis. This isn't just about, acute emergency care. It demands daily, personalized, and ongoing support.
Medication management, physical assistance, emotional stability, the list goes on.
And that demands this profound psychological and practical role reversal for the adult children, the member of the sandwich generation.
Suddenly you find yourself becoming a medical coordinator, an insurance navigator, an emotional anchor, a chauffeur, a problem solver for the very people who once did all of that for you.
The research describes this shift as being simultaneously tender, painful, meaningful, and just overwhelmingly demanding.
It's tender because you are giving back to someone you love, but it's painful because you're watching them decline. It's a huge emotional burden to transition into that protective, almost guardianship role over your own parent.
Exactly. And the cognitive load is immense. You're not just providing physical care, you're trying to manage these complex decisions about their future, their finances, their dignity.
All while remembering how fiercely independent they used to be.
And that conflict right there between their need for autonomy and your responsibility for their safety, that is a constant source of anxiety.
Now, as if that wasn't enough pressure from one direction, let's look at the pressure from below. Young adults staying home longer.
Right. That cultural narrative that kids leave at 18 and establish their own stable lives by their mid-20s is, well, for huge parts of the population, it's just outdated.
It is. It's because of these profound structural economic realities.
Our sources detail the financial factors making independence so difficult today. You have this triple whammy, high housing costs that demand these monumental down payments or crushing rents.
Slow wage growth that hasn't kept pace with inflation or living expenses at all.
And the simple reality that establishing a stable, salaried career today often requires prolonged education and years of unstable contract work or even unpaid internships.
This combination forces young adults to stay home, often well into their 20s, sometimes their 30s, whether they want to or not.
They're still just trying to build the foundation that, previous generations, especially post-war generations, achieved much, much earlier.
And this just prolongs the duration of that caregiving role, right? It completely disrupts the parent's expectation of moving into a phase of personal freedom and robust retirement savings in their late 40s and early 50s.
Instead of that, they're forced to continue supporting their young adults, helping with university fees, food, transportation, car insurance, housing, all while trying to help them navigate career turbulence.
It's the double dependency bind. And I think this is a really critical point for reflection, particularly for you listening right now. Have you noticed how much longer it takes for young people today to establish that stable career and independent housing that previous generations achieved so much earlier?
It's a systemic economic reality. It's not a failure of parenting or of character, and that reality directly fuels the sandwich generation dynamic.
And I think recognizing the societal causes helps reduce some of that individual guilt that's associated with this phase.
Absolutely. Now let's move into part 2, because we have to focus on the silent internal pressures. This is where the real erosion of well-being happens. We have to talk about the invisible emotional pressure.
This emotional exhaustion is often the most insidious and dangerous part, isn't it? Because it's so hard to measure from the outside, and it often goes completely unacknowledged.
It does. People in this generation, this middle generation, they often present with this external composure. They are masters of that smile while juggling flaming swords idea we talked about.
Right. They're culturally expected to be the strong ones, which means they suppress their own stress and their genuine emotional reactions to handle everyone else's crises.
But internally, that suppression is incredibly costly. They're carrying this profound, constant weight of worry. The internal dialogue is just exhausting.
It's agonizing. Are my parents safe? Are they lonely? Are my kids finding stability? Am I doing enough for either side? And how long can I sustain this financial output?
That continuous suppression creates an emotional pressure cooker that builds silently, and it often leads to a sudden, dramatic outburst or even a total collapse later on.
And the invisibility of it all just intensifies this stress because it creates isolation. Your friends, your coworkers, even your own siblings might not fully grasp the sheer weight you are carrying.
That feeling of being unseen, despite doing so much and sacrificing so much personal time, that is a massive crushing pressure point. The research is clear. Acknowledging this internal pressure is the crucial first step toward recognizing that you need support.
And that pressure is tied directly to the constant guilt cycle, which our sources identify as the defining emotional theme of the sandwich generation. It's pervasive.
Guilt is inescapable in this phase because you're living inside an impossible scenario. No matter how much time, energy, or money the caregiver gives, it never feels like enough.
Because the needs are infinite and they're often conflicting.
Exactly. If they prioritize their parents' medical needs by taking time off work, they feel they're neglecting their children's important events or their spouse.
And if they dare to take a moment for themselves, a break, a hobby, a much-needed vacation, the guilt hits hardest.
Oh, absolutely. Because they feel they should be using that time to catch up on household tasks, organize paperwork, or visit their parents again.
It's a zero-sum game, emotionally. The research really emphasizes that we have to understand that this guilt is emotional, not logical.
Right. It stems from holding yourself to this unrealistic, idealized standard, this expectation that you can be everything to everyone perfectly all the time.
So what does the research say about breaking this cycle? It seems to be about acceptance. You have to accept that perfection is impossible, and you have to proactively redefine what enough means in this specific context.
Redefining enough is the key. It means setting measurable, achievable standards rather than emotional ones. So instead of saying, I must always be available,
You define enough as, I will visit 3 times this week, and I will be fully present during those visits.
exactly, you shift from an ideal of omnipresence to a goal of strategic presence. It doesn't eliminate the love, but it frees up vital emotional space for better decision-making and, self-preservation.
And speaking of self-preservation, we absolutely must address the mental health toll. The constant vigilance, the chronic worry, the financial juggling, all of this has tangible physical and mental consequences that are scientifically measurable.
It does. Caregivers experience significantly higher rates of clinical anxiety, major depression, and total burnout. That constant vigilance worrying about financial stability, monitoring a parent's decline, navigating a child's career launch, it keeps stress hormones, especially cortisol, chronically elevated in the body.
And that elevated state creates a vicious cycle, right?
It does. Chronic stress fundamentally interferes with the brain's ability to regulate mood, concentration, and sleep. People report feeling constantly wired, unable to relax.
And they often describe themselves as being emotionally numb or disconnected from simple pleasures.
And it is so essential to stress, as the source material does, that these symptoms are the natural, predictable result of severe overload. They are not signs of personal weakness or character failure. This is simply a biological reaction to an unsustainable situation.
The sources stress that seeking professional help, whether that's therapy, cognitive behavioral techniques, or joining specialized peer support groups, is a critical, essential part of staying healthy.
It's not a sign of failure, it's a necessary strategic adjustment to manage the load.
And we should address the barriers, because many people in the sandwich generation delay seeking help because they feel they don't have the time for therapy.
Or they feel guilty spending money on their own mental health. But the research is unambiguous. Treating your mental health is a necessary investment that directly increases your capacity to care for others safely.
Right. There are often organizations that offer peer-to-peer forums or online support groups specifically for this generation, which can offer crucial validation and actionable advice without a huge time commitment or cost.
And this leads us directly to a very specific cognitive point that causes immense anxiety for so many people in midlife.
Ah, yes. Forgetfulness isn't age, it's overload. So many people worry they're experiencing the onset of cognitive decline when they misplace their keys, or miss an appointment, or struggle to focus in a work meeting.
And the sources offer just immense clarity and relief here. This persistent forgetfulness, this difficulty concentrating and making complex plans, is usually a sign of a brain overloaded by dozens of concurrent responsibilities. It's not necessarily actual cognitive decline.
You can think of the brain's working memory like a computer's RAM. and the sandwich generation's RAM is just perpetually full.
That's a great analogy. If your brain is constantly processing the fact that mom needs a specialist appointment, the 19-year-old needs tuition money, and you have a massive deadline at work all at the same time, there's just no cognitive bandwidth left for executive functions like complex planning or encoding new memories.
So the crucial insight here is that the solution isn't primarily medical, it's aggressively reducing your cognitive load.
Exactly. The sources recommend really practical steps. Delegating tasks, outsourcing non-essential duties like cleaning or grocery delivery, organizing routines, and creating a single master list that externalizes all those mental burdens onto paper or a digital system.
You declutter the mental desktop.
You do. And mental clarity often returns surprisingly quickly once that relentless internal stress decreases.
And even when you're surrounded by family members, the very people you're sacrificing for caregivers report this profound sense of isolation. Let's talk about the caregiver's quiet loneliness.
It's the ultimate paradox, isn't it? Feeling deeply lonely while never truly being alone.
It is. Caregivers often carry the specific weight and all the details of their responsibilities that nobody else sees or truly understands, not even the people they are caring for.
You're constantly needed, constantly surrounded by family, but you feel alone in the emotional pressure, in the decision-making burden, and in the worry you carry.
And the isolation is compounded by just practical reality. Social lives shrink to almost nothing.
Time and energy are finite resources. Hobbies, personal friendships, leisure activities, they often just fade entirely into the background because the cognitive and physical demands of caregiving simply consume every available minute.
This withdrawal from social connections directly contributes to increased stress and emotional fatigue.
So recognizing this loneliness and acknowledging that the isolation is a real, measurable consequence of the role, not a character flaw, that's the first step towards seeking out small, strategic ways to socially reconnect.
It could be a 15-minute phone call with an understanding friend, or joining one of those support groups we mentioned earlier.
So if we connect this silent emotional compression and the quiet loneliness to the bigger picture, how does this impact long-term family communication? Does it make boundary setting harder or paradoxically more necessary?
That's a great question. It seems like this silent chronic pressure would be incredibly corrosive to relationships.
Absolutely. The emotional compression makes boundary setting both necessary for survival and exponentially harder to implement.
Why is that?
Because the caregiver is already operating under immense guilt and isolation. They are terrified that enforcing a boundary, saying, I need Saturday off, for example, will be perceived as unloving or uncommitted, or that it will ignite a conflict.
So that fear causes them to let responsibilities just expand endlessly, which in turn fuels the burnout cycle and increases resentment.
And it creates a communication pattern where only crises get discussed, and the caregiver's needs, their feelings, their personal limits, they're perpetually excluded from the conversation.
The source material is clear. Ignoring your own needs corrodes the relationship just as much as setting overly rigid boundaries might.
Okay, let's ground this reality in the tangible, practical challenges now. Part 3 is about the financial, professional, and physical pressure points. And we have to start with the financial pressure and the sandwich wallet.
This is, without a doubt, one of the largest sources of anxiety and long-term consequence. You have two vastly different but equally pressing sets of expenses that are just accumulating rapidly.
On the parent side, the costs are heavy and they're often unexpected. You have high copays for multiple specialists, the cost of prescription medication, specialized equipment like wheelchairs or lift chairs.
Home adaptations for accessibility ramps, bathroom modifications, or even direct financial support if the parent's pensions or savings run low.
And at the exact same time, the young adults who are still at home require significant financial support. University or trade school fees, sometimes covering housing if they're in an expensive city for their career.
Food, technology upgrades, which are essential for remote work or study now, and crucially, assistance with those high-cost life events like a first car purchase or rental deposits.
It's basically like funding two separate households and two different life phases during the exact period when you expected to be at your peak savings capacity for your own future.
The financial juggling act is just relentless and demanding.
And the long-term impact of this double financial responsibility is severe, according to the research. It often means delaying retirement by years.
Or significantly reducing your long-term savings contributions, sometimes even liquidating existing savings or retirement funds to cover a current crisis.
And this is what leads to that quiet, paralyzing internal question that keeps caregivers awake at night. Who will take care of me when I get old?
The resources are being drained in the present, leaving the future precarious. Acknowledging this long-term double strain is crucial for proactive planning and sometimes for justifying tough financial boundaries with either parents or children.
Next up, we have career demands and decreasing energy, which hits the sandwich generation at a crucial and often unforgiving time in life.
It's a devastating timing conflict. The 45 to 55 age bracket is often the peak of your professional responsibility. You're frequently in management or leadership roles, facing high expectations, managing large teams, dealing with intense deadlines.
But simultaneously, the physical and logistical demands of caregiving are just intensifying daily.
Balancing the two leads directly to chronic, profound fatigue. The sources describe this relentless multitasking cycle. You're getting up early to check on parents or prepare morning care, putting in a full, high-stress workday.
And then immediately shifting to household duties, school meetings, or late-night parent check-ins, there is very little room left for personal rest or recovery.
Or even basic leisure. And the implication is severe. Work performance inevitably suffers.
Caregivers might miss deadlines, exhibit that mental fog we talked about, or struggle with the critical creative thinking required at peak career levels.
This forces a need for healthier work-life balance conversations with your employers and with yourself, and better boundaries to maintain your professional routines and protect your income source.
Because if you lose your job due to burnout, the entire structure just collapses.
We often focus on the emotional weight and the financial squeeze, but we can't ignore the physical strain of caregiving itself. The body takes a serious, often cumulative hit that is so frequently underestimated.
We need to detail the effort required for assisting aging parents. We're talking about repetitive heavy lifting, helping someone up from a chair or a bed, bending constantly for tasks like changing clothes or assisting with hygiene.
These are repetitive, high-impact actions that lead to chronic back pain, joint strain, inflamed knees, and persistent soreness.
And this physical burden just adds another exhausting layer on top of the mental and emotional stress. It creates a total systemic fatigue that is so hard to recover from.
The physical drain also compromises your immune system, leaving you, the caregiver, more susceptible to illness.
So acknowledging this physical dimension is vital. Caregivers need to prioritize learning safe lifting techniques, utilizing mobility aids aggressively, even when the parent resists, and most importantly, sharing tasks with siblings or professional aides when possible to reduce long-term harm to their own bodies.
Your body is the essential infrastructure. It has to be maintained.
Finally, let's look outward at the challenge of parents who resist HELT. This is one of the most common and emotionally draining conflicts the sandwich generation faces.
And the resistance rarely stems from maliciousness, does it? It almost always comes from this deep-seated emotional pain.
Pride, denial, or a genuine, fierce fear of losing their autonomy and becoming a burden to their children.
And this resistance forces the caregiver into an agonizing safety versus independence conflict. A simple, well-intentioned suggestion, "Dad, let's use the walker," can escalate so quickly into a conflict.
Because it touches on the parent's loss of dignity and autonomy.
So the sources outline some clear strategies for navigating this. It emphasizes that the goal is not total control, but collaborative safety.
And that requires patience and profound empathy. Treating the parent not as a child, but as an adult who is losing a core part of their identity.
The key seems to be involving parents in the decisions about their care to the maximum extent possible.
When older parents feel respected, included, and heard, it dramatically reduces their defensiveness and opens the door to them gradually accepting assistance.
So you frame the change not as taking something away, but as ensuring comfort and safety so they can maintain their independence longer.
It's a delicate, gradual process, but it is so necessary for both their physical safety and the caregiver's peace of mind.
Okay, moving into part 4. Let's shift our focus decisively from identifying the problems to talking about resilience and the actionable tools for sustainable care.
Because surviving this phase requires strategy, foresight, and firm boundaries, not just endless, self-sacrificing effort.
Let's start with a painful but incredibly common reality: the sibling support gap.
This is where families who are already under stress often fracture. Caregiving duties are rarely, if ever, split equally.
The source material suggests there are typically 3 types of siblings, right?
Yes, the primary caregiver who handles the daily logistics, the financial contributor who provides money but very little time, and the absent sibling who might live far away or simply avoid responsibility due to work, emotional distance, or just denial.
And the primary caregiver, the one who takes on the bulk of the logistical, emotional, and physical work, often feels this intense resentment and abandonment.
They're asking that critical question, why am I the only one doing this? The resulting sense of unfairness, that emotional burden of the resentment itself, is often just as heavy as the physical burden they're carrying.
So the research dives deep into how the primary caregiver can process this. While healthy, clear communication and requesting specific tasks is always recommended.
The ultimate psychological coping mechanism for the primary caregiver might actually involve accepting the reality of unequal effort.
But wait, doesn't that acceptance just breed long-term silent resentment?
Hmm.
What does the source say about the cost of that silent acceptance if it's not balanced with boundaries?
That's the critical challenge. Silent acceptance without boundaries is toxic. The sources recommend that the caregiver must shift their focus entirely from trying to control the siblings' actions to controlling their own reaction and expectations.
So acceptance here means realizing you cannot make them help.
But you can control how much you allow that unequal burden to impact your own life. The key is strategic boundary setting within that sibling dynamic.
So that might look like hiring a professional aide and telling the absent sibling, since you cannot physically be here, your contribution must cover 50% of the aide's cost.
Exactly. You stop asking for favors and you start setting expectations for financial or logistical compensation. You focus on what you can control and what you choose to prioritize, which has to be your own survival.
And that brings us perfectly to the broader need for the importance of setting emotional boundaries. This isn't optional. It's fundamental to survival.
Caregivers typically struggle immensely to say no because the desire to help family is so ingrained and they feel immense guilt.
But without boundaries, responsibilities just expand until you hit total exhaustion, resentment, and a collapse of the whole system.
The sources are absolutely clear on this. Setting emotional boundaries doesn't mean caring less. It means caring sustainably and responsibly.
Boundaries are truly a survival tool. They protect your limited energy, your mental health, and your core relationships from that endless expansion of obligations.
This means defining non-negotiables. I will not answer health calls after 9 p.m., or I cannot provide financial assistance for this particular purchase.
And when those boundaries are clear and consistently enforced, even if it's difficult at first, family dynamics paradoxically improve.
They do, because expectations are managed, and the crisis mode becomes less frequent. It allows the caregiver essential time for rest and recovery, moving the dynamic from constantly reacting to crisis to proactively managing resources.
A healthy boundary, the research reminds us, ensures you are an aid, not a victim.
Next, we have to talk about planning today. Avoids crisis tomorrow. This speaks to the massive aversion so many families have to engaging in difficult, uncomfortable, but essential conversations about the future.
The sources strongly underscored that delaying these conversations about medical preferences, end-of-life wishes, legal documents, financial arrangements, it leads directly and inevitably to chaotic, stress-filled, high-conflict decisions.
And those decisions have to be made during an emotional emergency. Imagine trying to make decisions about resuscitation preferences or power of attorney when your loved one is in the hospital and you're exhausted and grieving. The stress is just exponential.
Proactive planning reverses this chaos entirely. By discussing legal documents ahead of time, families gain clarity and crucial confidence.
And we need to be specific here. This means having updated wills, signing a medical power of attorney or POA, establishing a financial POA, and creating advance directives, also known as living wills.
And also ensuring IPO releases are signed so the caregiver can actually speak to doctors legally.
Planning isn't about anticipating the worst. It's about reducing uncertainty. It dramatically lowers the emotional stress level for all family members because the decisions have already been made by the person whose life it is.
The research shows this process, though uncomfortable, often strengthens family bonds because it's a shared exercise in respecting the elder's wishes.
Okay, this next point must be underlined and shouted from the rooftops. Investing in self-care isn't a luxury, it's a survival tool.
We have to challenge that deep-seated guilt associated with self-prioritization.
Caregivers are trained by our culture and often by their own guilt to put themselves last. They believe they must prioritize others. But the research proves this is a destructive approach that guarantees burnout, eventual illness, and total systemic failure.
Self-care is not indulgence. It is a strategic investment in physical and emotional resilience.
And we're talking about non-negotiable self-care. Adequate sleep, regular physical exercise, even if it's only a brisk walk nutrition, and scheduled protected short breaks.
Even small habits, a 15-minute quiet coffee moment, listening to music without interruption, or reading a chapter of a book, make a huge difference in sustained emotional stability and stress regulation.
The simple truth is inescapable. A healthier, more rested, more resilient caregiver creates a fundamentally healthier and safer family dynamic.
If you aren't strong and recharged, you cannot effectively support others. It's the single most strategic decision you can make, and you have to treat it like a medical appointment that cannot be missed.
And it's so vital not to lose sight of the good moments amid the chaos, because they are the fuel that sustains the effort. Let's remember that small joys become priceless.
In the relentless rush of medical appointments, financial deadlines, and logistical crises, those small, simple moments of connection become so important.
A quiet conversation with a parent about their youth, a shared laugh over a silly anecdote, a simple family meal where the phones are put away. They take on this profound emotional weight.
They provide balance, and they serve as powerful, vital anchors that remind the caregiver why their role is meaningful and why they are making these sacrifices. These moments are the proof that the relationship is still vibrant, not just transactional.
That perspective is so essential. Gratitude doesn't magically erase stress, but it helps reframe these difficult experiences as part of a deeper, shared life journey, rather than just a series of burdensome tasks.
And years later, those small moments of connection are often recalled as the most meaningful parts of that stressful time, far outweighing the memory of the paperwork.
Finally, we come to the most powerful coping mechanism of all, and the one that requires the most courage. Asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
This directly challenges that damaging cultural belief that a good caregiver must handle everything alone, never complain, and always appear capable.
That mindset is not only emotionally damaging, it's logistically unrealistic. No one human being can do everything alone, and no one should have to try.
Asking for support, whether from siblings, neighbors, friends, professional care services, or support groups, is not losing control. It is strategically sharing the load in a sustainable way.
It is a sign that you understand the scope of the challenge and are mature enough to build a reliable team around you.
This might involve hiring someone for respite care so you could take a full weekend off, outsourcing cleaning services, subscribing to meal preparation kits to reduce that cognitive load.
The research confirms that the braver and healthier choice is to share the load. It allows the caregiver necessary time to rest, breathe, and recover, thereby strengthening the entire sustainable family unit.
We have covered so much ground in this intense deep dive into the sandwich generation experience. We've laid bare the heavy dual demands, a constant crushing cycle of guilt, the invisible emotional and financial squeeze, and the mental and physical overload that define this crucial life stage.
And if we connect this all to the bigger picture, the core message remains unwavering and supportive. You are not alone in this profound, demanding role. Your struggles are validated by global research.
And sustainable care starts and ends with compassionate self-care, firm, necessary boundaries, and the courage to admit proactively when the load is just too heavy to carry alone.
So let's end with a provocative thought for you, our listener, to take away and mull over. While we have rightly focused on today's intense pressures, consider the long-term legacy of this generation, the first to truly face this convergence of demographic and economic strain.
By proactively planning naming those documents we talked about, setting boundaries, and insisting on support, the sandwich generation isn't just surviving this challenge. It is potentially forging a path and reducing the systemic burden on the next generation.
So the question is, what small step, what single conversation, or one new boundary can you take today to ensure your children aren't forced into the exact same unsustainable, crushing role tomorrow?
Thank you for joining us for this crucial deep dive into the challenge of the sandwich generation. You can find more comprehensive analyses and essential knowledge over on the Fluent Mindcast channel. We hope you'll join us next time.